Welcome to the third presentation in the series where we're looking at this puzzling book, The Song of Songs. The phrase could mean the greatest song or a set of songs, and indeed it is a set of erotic love poems. We've seen that the meaning of this book is a celebration of sexual love, such an important part of human existence throughout all time. And it's got so much to teach us. It's a set of songs. They're written in poetic form and must be interpreted that way. They don't fit any historical point. You can't identify the people, and it's not telling a story. It's poetry. The language, we saw, is metaphorical. It's highly sensual. It's often erotic. The words in the original language have deep meanings in the sexual sense. There's a woman, and she's the central figure. There's the man, and then there's wider society. But the woman has a dominant role in these poems. She's presented as virtuous, assertive, positive, and so much of that runs completely counter to the ways of that society. It speaks of love and attraction, which inevitably leads to a desire for the couple to be together. That leads on to a desire for intimacy and sexual fulfillment. That's the way God made us. Very powerful. But we have to learn how to control this power and not abuse it. And that's where the woman comes up with advice to the wider community around, and particularly to the young girls. Do not seek to arouse this kind of demanding love, which means total commitment until the right moment. Love is not a passing emotion. Love is a demanding and exhausting relationship. Powerful messages that we need to grasp again today. Yes, this book is in many ways subversive against the culture of the time, where men had the dominant role and women were just property. Here the woman dominates in speaking. There's an open expression of sexual desire, and a sexual desire on the part of the woman. And the idea that sexual relationship involves mutuality. It's not just the man getting what he wants, and the woman being a kind of servant or slave. Deeply subversive in the culture and context of the day, and still deeply subversive in many ways today. Now let's look at one or two specific parts. We're going on to look at some themes and some ideas that develop from this book. From chapter 4. Listen, my beloved. Look, here he comes, leaping across the mountains, bounding over the hills. My beloved is like a gazelle or a young stag. Look, there he stands behind our wall, gazing through the windows, peering through the lattice. My beloved spoke to me and said to me, Arise, my darling, my beautiful one. Come with me. Her response, my dove, in the cleft of the rocks, in the hiding places on the mountainside, show me your face, let me hear your voice. Let your voice, for your voice is sweet and your face is lovely. Catch for us the little foxes that ruin the vineyards. My beloved is mine and I am his. He browses among the lilies until the day breaks and the shadows flee. In the language of the time and in the words used, here is the man seeking his woman, his wife, for intimacy and sexual love. And she responds. And her response is willing. Vineyards in this kind of poetry speaks of the place of sexual fulfillment. A desire for all the obstacles to the fulfillment of their love, that these obstacles be removed. And they spend the whole night together. Security, intimacy, What a beautiful picture of sexual love and fulfillment within the bounds of total commitment. Going on to chapter 3. All night long in my bed I looked for the one my heart loves. I looked for him, but did not find him. I will search for the one my heart loves, so I looked for him, but did not find him. Scarcely had I passed them, that's the wider people round about, when I found the one my heart loves. I held him, and would not let him go, till I brought him to my mother's house, to the room of the one who conceived me. Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you by the gazelles and by the does of the field, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. Her love for him has been totally aroused. She's desperate for him. She searches for him. In wider society there's no alternative, there's no other answer, till she found the one her heart loves. There's a total commitment, there's a singleness of mind and purpose, and she's not going to let him go. She's going to bring him to the place where they can have their full sexual fulfillment. She's lost him. Now this is poetry, it's not literalism. It expresses the depth of her heart. When he's not around, she wants him. And in her heart there's a desperation to find him again. Once commitment and sexual commitment is aroused, then there's a bond between the couple. And it needs to be together. She will actively search until she finds him. There are verses in between that picture her searching. Then she holds on to him, bringing him back to the place of sexual intimacy. We don't know the circumstances of the separation in the poem. Maybe their close commitment had drifted apart a little bit. It can do from time to time. But the desperation is there on part of both to come back to total commitment. But she repeats the warning to the young girls around, these imaginary young girls. Do not arouse this powerful passion until the right time. Once this passion is aroused, it's there. The commitment's there. The bond between them there. There's an active searching to maintain it. Don't arouse it. Don't play around with it. It's too dangerous. It's wonderful. But like anything wonderful, it can be abused. Quite a long stretch through chapter 5 and into the beginning of chapter 6. I'm going to pick up little bits of this. I slept, but my heart was awake. She's kind of half awake, half sleeping, dozing. Listen, my beloved is knocking. Open to me, my sister, my darling, my dove, my flawless one. Titles of endearment and love. My beloved thrust his hand through the latch opening. My heart began to pound for him. I arose to open for my beloved. I opened for my beloved, but my beloved had left. He was gone, and my heart sank at his departure. In bed, dozing. And he seeks sexual fulfillment. The part of the passage in between implies that they already had had sexual fulfillment early on in the night. He wants more. but she hesitates. And the picture is given there of her hesitation. Half asleep, but her mind fully awake. But he starts to arouse her. And the response is there. But sadly, something goes wrong. I put down a speculation here, but it's quite likely. Maybe they went through the physical act of sexual relationship, but because of his demand and because of her hesitation, the true expression of love and commitment had somehow disappeared. One of the tragic problems of our modern era is the way that we have separated the sexual act from true commitment, ultimate deep commitment, permanent. And we've also separated it from the consequences of that act that were designed in. The bearing of children. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing, for we're overpopulating many parts of the world. But sexual relationship is wonderful and it's powerful, but it involves both. And it's more than the physical act. I opened for my beloved, but my beloved had left. My heart sank at his departure. They enjoyed the physical act, but the spiritual, emotional, social depth of it had somehow vanished. How realistic and how true this is to life, expressed in this vivid and powerful poem. Now, faced with that disappointment, all the high expectations, she's got to stop and rethink things. And this is presented from the woman's perspective. She had hesitated. Maybe his desire was unrealistic, but she had hesitated, and it's pictured in poetic terms from her perspective. And she stops and she says, well, where did I go wrong? What's so special about this man? She asks that question. And it's a kind of synthetic dialogue between her and people round about, imaginary. What is it about him that makes him the most wonderful person in the entire world? Because that's what she really thinks and believes. And somehow there's a gulf, a gap cut between them. And her mind starts to work through. And it starts by imagining him in her mind working down from his head and down over his body. And the way the poetry is written, she is envisaging this working down, looking at his naked body. What makes this man, my man, the one to whom I've committed my whole life, what makes him the most wonderful person in the entire world? Whatever else is true, hesitation undermines the true meaning of intimacy. There's got to be a total commitment and a total willingness both ways. And towards the end of the poem, they come back together, they consummate their total commitment. And there's now total freedom in love-making, and in all the pleasure they give to each other, the bond is re-established with all its reality. Oh, there's so much in this that speaks deep thoughts into the nature of sexual intimacy and commitment. And that's how she finishes it. We so often allegorize this away. In the language of the original, you can't do that. My beloved has gone down to his garden. His garden is her body, the place of sexual fulfillment. To the beds of spices, a wonderful time together. To browse in the gardens, to gather lilies, the picture of the wonder of total commitment expressed in sexual intimacy. And her total commitment to him, I am my beloved's. And his total commitment to her, and my beloved is mine. He browses among the lilies. There is total commitment expressed physically between them. Total commitment and love. No excessive demands. No hesitation. Willingly giving each other. That's the true meaning of sexual intimacy, and now it's restored. And that's where the poem finishes. This needs pondered again and again, because it's a vivid and a real picture of what it's all about and the way God intended it to be. God loves us, and God has given us something to give us pleasure. Now, of course, this entire book, all the set of poems, is set within love and marriage. Total commitment. The poems don't deal with those who are not married, but for those who are committed to each other. This is the true meaning of sexual intimacy. We can summarize it this way. Now that's easy to say. It is not easy to achieve. And it may start well, but hit the bumpy road later on in life. That's God's intention. There are many things that can undermine the true meaning of intimacy. The little foxes in the vineyard the place of lovemaking. And we've got to be honest and look at these, and root them out. For the strength of the bond is so important. And indeed the strength of the bond is the strength of the wider society and of family life. Total commitment, and the whole thing totally involves each 100%. It powerfully consumes her. She pictures it from her perspective. But there's total freedom. God made us so that we can give pleasure to each other. Selflessly, in commitment, vulnerable, secure, in total freedom. But let's move on. Throughout the book and many of the poems, it's very clear that attraction between them involves all the senses. So there are many references to things like the physical attractiveness of the other. Now, some of the things are the physical attractiveness of the other that are obvious to anybody who sees them in terms of physical appearance. But it goes further than that. And in these poems there's the physical attractiveness of the other, where there's a total openness. In the words of Genesis, they were totally naked and there was no embarrassment. And they describe each other's bodies and find them physically attractive. But also there are pictures here of sights and sounds, fragrances, but the touch that's so important in the relationship. All the senses are involved. And in many places there's pictures of the environment when they're alone together. Secure, if you like, gazing into each other's eyes, wrapped in love and commitment and desire. Oh, we've got to watch that we don't denigrate our bodies. We saw a moment or two ago when she hesitated over sexual intimacy. And then she felt she'd lost him. And she had to stop and think things through. And the way she thought things through looked at the physical attractiveness of her man. Things that made him unique for her. Now that's from the woman's perspective. Of course, from the male perspective, the physical attraction is even more important. And you can find that pictured in several places in different poems. He finds her stunningly beautiful, wonderfully attractive. And again the pictures speak of him admiring her. Total freedom and nakedness together. So in chapter 4 he describes her body. Starts at the top of her head and moves down to her intimate parts. In chapter 6 he reflects in more general terms on her sheer beauty in his eyes that make her unique amongst women. Then in chapter 7, this time he starts with her feet, works up her body, but then comes back to the intimate parts related to sexual desire. This is the way God made us. He made us for each other, to bless each other, to enrich our lives with each other, in total freedom, total trust, total vulnerability. God gave us bodies. He didn't make us disembodied spirits, more like the angels. And we are integrated beings. Our bodies, our souls, our personality, and our spirits all work together in an integrated fashion. That's the way God made us. Yes, our bodies allow us to move, to live. What we will be like when we leave and move into His closer presence, difficult to describe. But God made us with bodies, and our bodies are important. And you only have to read sections of Paul's writing where he emphasizes that. We express ourselves through our bodies. We do good or not good through our bodies. And our bodies are needed. We can use our bodies to serve and help others. Our hands, our feet, our voice, our nature, our personality, our hard work. We can bring blessing to others all around in so many ways. We can't do that without bodies. In one sense, again going back to the New Testament, our bodies are there as God's hands and feet to do the good work of Jesus. But our bodies are also there to give pleasure to our life partner. There's a bond between the couple. And it's expressed physically through their bodies. And parts of the human body, both for men and women, are there just for sexual pleasure. We're not animals that live just by instinct. We're far, far more. And this is one of the tragedies that was going on at the times of the biblical era, and has gone on and continued on in the church, where the wonders of the human body have been played down, and sexual relationships have been put down, and celibacies have been elevated. And the continual thought that our bodies are bad, it's our spirits and our minds, our personalities, that's what's important. Not true. You only have to look at the biblical record to see that we are totally integrated beings. Never regard our bodies as impure or evil. Too dangerous to get up, have a shower, and then look at ourselves in the mirror and gasp with horror. No. We have a responsibility, yes, to look after our bodies in what we eat and the exercise we take, and not abuse them by eating wrong things, taking wrong things, doing wrong things, or living irresponsibly. But our bodies are part of us, integrated with our whole being, and they are important. Look after them. They're not impure. They're not evil. And sexual relationship is part of an expression of love and commitment that we express physically through our bodies. When we rip it away from commitment, we lose so much. That's what this book is emphasizing. But God made us that way, and it's wonderful. The poems exult in the sheer power of sexual love. Under the apple tree I aroused you, there your mother conceived you, there she who is in labour gave you birth. Place me like a seal over your heart, like a seal in your arm, for love is as strong as death, this jealousy unyielding as the grave. Burns like a blazing fire, like a mighty flame. Many waters cannot quench love, rivers cannot sweep it away. If one were to give all the wealth of one's house for love, it would be utterly scorned. Beautiful, powerful, wonderful poetry. The apple tree again is the symbol of the place of sexual arousal, excitement, fulfillment. And the woman realizes that that was the origin of her husband, her man. Sexual love is powerful. Now the seal is a symbol of total ownership. This is what she's saying. She has aroused her man. Potential of having a child is there. She's given herself to him because she wants him, as it were, to have ownership over her. She gives herself unreservedly to the man and invites him to take ownership. But the words that are used speak of him. A seal over the heart is his inward being. A seal of the arm is outward activity. He is giving himself totally to her. And she is responding by giving herself totally, unreservedly to him. And in that position, she can then arouse him. And they enter into sexual intimacy. That's the meaning of sexual love. This is a powerful and wonderful and beautiful picture. But there's more to it than that. Love, sexual love, is strong as death. In those days, and indeed today, death is seen as the ultimate power. Can't cheat death, can't cheat the grave, comes to us all. And yet she says that her love for her husband, his love for her, is more powerful than the most powerful force in the society at that time. Jealousy unyielding. Jealousy we so often think of as a wrong emotion. It isn't necessarily wrong at all. It's a desire for the welfare of another that tolerates no rivals. And it's completely tenacious. He is her husband. They are committed to each other. It is completely exclusive, and it will be guarded jealously by both. And it's tenacious. Another powerful and beautiful picture. But she describes it like a blazing fire, like a flooding river, more powerful than infinite wealth. Sexual desire, commitment, fulfillment has all of these potentials. Enormous power, wonderful experience, but out of hand is capable of doing great damage. Very realistic. And we've got to come to terms with these great and deep issues. Going on in chapter 8. If she is a wall, we will build towers of silver on her. If she is a door, we will enclose her with panels of cedar. Spoken by the wider community. And then she speaks, I am a wall, and my breasts are like towers. Thus I have become in his eyes like one bringing contentment. That's what wider society may try to do with women. I've got to look at the meaning of these words and their deep significance. The wall speaks of her not available for men. She's chaste. So here is a girl in society who's totally chaste, maintaining her virginity. The door speaks of a girl in society who's open to men. If you like, she's promiscuous. The opposite. What does society do? Tries to reinforce her protection from men. And if she's promiscuous, tries to keep her away from men. Now that's the outward imposition of society, and you can find in some societies today that is being done. Women are kept away from men, and any woman who has any relationship with a man suffers very severe social stigma, maybe perhaps being thrown out of her family. But the woman here comes back with a wonderful and a much better picture. She says, I am a wall. I am not available to other men. My breasts are like towers means I am sexually mature. Here is a picture of a woman, any woman, who's taken the decision. I've got to an age of sexual maturity, but I'm not available to other men. That means that she's reserved for her husband. I have become in his eyes like one bringing contentment. And her total fulfillment and peace is with him. And his total fulfillment and peace is with her. But it's spoken from her perspective. You see, it comes from within. Comes from within this woman. It's not imposed by outward society. No matter what a girl may do, the society will impose things, or can do. No, that's not the way. Comes from within. And we've got to find ways in our modern day society for both men and women to come to terms with this powerful sexual drive. And within themselves to take decisions. And we've got to give them the support, and perhaps we've got to change things in society to enable it, that they are supported. But we don't impose it. If you like, this whole section celebrates chastity. That's something that's fashionable in Western societies today. And it's not God being a killjoy, a spoil sport. It's God wanting the best for us in the wonder of a sexual relationship. And He doesn't want it spoiled. That openness, that freedom, that vulnerability, that fulfillment, that sheer pleasure that He wants us to enjoy, and doesn't want it spoiled. What a beautiful picture. But it goes on. Solomon had a vineyard in Baal Hamon. He let out his vineyard to tenants. Each was to bring for its fruit 1,000 shekels of silver. But my own vineyard is mine to give. The 1,000 shekels are for you, Solomon, and the 200 for those who tend its fruit. The vineyard is the place of sexual fulfillment in this kind of poetry. Spoken from the feminine perspective. The place of feminine sexuality, or the place of actual love-making. And there's a painted contrast here. Maybe this gives us the clue to why this set of poems is in the book, and how Solomon's been connected with them. He certainly didn't write them. We do know from elsewhere that Solomon had a large number of wives and many concubines. In effect, he had bought sex. He was very wealthy. He was very clever in the intellectual sense. And rulers of neighbouring people groups round about wanted to get a relationship with him, perhaps to get favours or to get peace. So they gave him a girl of their royal courts, and he just took on wife after wife after wife. Of course, he had to pay for the dowry. He'd bought the sex. And the second-class wives called concubines. Compare that. But my own vineyard is mine to give. My sexuality, the place of love-making surrounding my body is mine. It's mine to give. And she reserves it for one man. You can have all yours. You can pay as much money to get it. And here is the contrast between what sexuality should be and tragically in the life of Solomon had become. And Solomon's descendants reaped a terrible heritage, a whirlwind of problems from his abuse of sexuality. And indeed his entire kingdom, with all its wealth and power, split in two shortly after his death. The whole social structure had become weakened and fell apart by his irresponsibility. And his sexual irresponsibility was the major component, because all these wives and concubines brought into his nation all sorts of things that were not good, that undermined the social structure, that undermined the centrality of God in control. But she says, but my own vineyard is mine to give. That is a woman's place. And it's reserved for one man of my choice. Now that is utterly subversive in the days when this was written. Many of the wives and concubines were given to Solomon. They had no say, these girls. But my own vineyard is mine to give. And the wonders of sexual fulfillment come from that perspective and that attitude. If you like, that's celebrating monogamy. What wonderful and amazing pictures we can glean from this book. And in the final presentation, I'm going to try to draw it together and to try to see what are the main messages for us today and the implications for modern lifestyles.